Okay, so we're gonna talk about the PyGMT v 0.40 release and whether there's any like PRs, any bugs we want to fix before then by June 20th. Yeah, so go ahead, Will.
I was just going to say, I know I have two kind of the more minor PRs, the one for the columns naming and one for grid fill parameters I plan to get done. And then wrap grid volume and grid to XYZ. Both of those are, if they're done in time, great, but I don't think it'll be that, I don't think they're too popular of like features. So if they're held off until 5.0, that's okay, or 0.5, that's okay too.
Okay, I think that at least a couple of them should be pretty reasonable to get finished up within the next couple of days. Is my impression from having skimmed through them.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of free time, so I'm not worried about being able to get it done right now. But yeah, it's for everybody else if getting it reviewed and things like that.
Okay, sounds good. From my perspective, it would be nice to finish up some of the smaller ones like the GRD track and block and XYZ inputs, but some of the like I think I have a couple out there that are like injecting aliases into the function signature, and that's I think not essential for V4 because it might take more time to review. So I can open the issue today then with the June 20th tentative release date, and we can start working through the checklist. Does that sound pretty good to everyone?
Yep, that would be very great. Very good. What else is there? Anyone else? Michael, Dongdong? Do you have any?
Yeah, I still have two open PRs. One is about the long form alias and the short form arguments. Yeah, I can't find it.
Yeah, I've only opened the H line module, but I think that's okay to do that for 0.5 because I don't have so much time this week. I have a lot of work to do besides working on GMT. So I think it's okay to keep this for 0.5.
I think that the warnings would also be pretty quick to wrap up. I thought Weiji had posted a comment on that, and after that gets addressed from my perspective, it seems pretty good to go.
So how about your PR for the auto completion of the the parameters? I don't try it, but I think it's very useful.
Yeah,
Megan's from
I agree, it's useful. I got a bit discouraged by the Visual Studio Code problem. So essentially and this is not exclusive. I can't remember if I posted this on GitHub or not, but it's not exclusive to the tab completion. It's actually everything we use a decorator for doesn't go into the doc strings in Visual Studio Code. So rather than seeing, like, for example, the list of aliases, you just see bracket aliases, which is so annoying. So but from a long-term solution, it might be necessary to totally restructure if we wanted to have better support in programs that don't import before you finish typing your script, then it might be necessary to totally restructure how we do decorators. But for a short-term solution, it seems fine just to go with that PR, which uses another decorator to insert them into the signature so that you can at least do tab completion in anything that you type import PyGMT before you type everything else.
So is the issue just that because it's not the actual function, it's Visual Studio doesn't read it as an available parameter?
Yeah, so all of that anything that's a decorator gets applied when you do import PyGMT. And so because it doesn't execute any code, it's just a simple text editor most of the time, it does not support that functionality. And there's some related issues that have been posted in Jedi, which is the open source package that Visual Studio Code uses to support basically doc strings or tab completion. And it was really difficult to interpret from those issues whether or not this should be expected to work. But I think it shouldn't, because Visual Studio Code does not want to execute anything while you're typing it, because that would be like a vulnerability.
I mean, if that's the case, is it nothing against using Visual Studio or any of editors that run similar, but isn't it kind of a, hey, that's just what you get from using that type of program? Or is there a real potential workaround, do you think?
Not without a pretty extreme amount of work. So I think for the scope of as long as we're use aliases, there's not a better workaround than
but would that
this current one.
would that be more a Visual Studio Code problem, or something we should actively fix on PyGMT's side?
I don't know whether it should be considered a Visual Studio Code problem. In how I've seen like responses to issues on Visual Studio Code, I would be very skeptical that they would be interested in making it work how we would like it to work.
Yeah, no, they have like a large, kind of few 100,000 people using it maybe.
Yeah.
But for from a user's perspective, would Visual Studio Code be like something a lot of people use? Like I feel like most of my friends use random things like Jupyter, Spider, maybe.
But you can also
Or-
run Jupyter in Visual Studio Code.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why people may like Visual Studio Code rather than Jupyter, because you can run
Than pure
almost
Jupyter.
anything. Yeah.
Okay.
I use Visual Studio Code and do not find it too arduous to just look at the online documentation rather than relying on the I can't, they call it like IntelliSense or something, where it pops up the doc string as you're typing it.
Maybe we could just like get this in, and then like if someone like complains, why is this not working on Visual Studio Code, then we can sort of slowly like start to address it.
Yeah,
But
that
yeah,
sounds
I do
good.
agree it's like a good feature to have it.
Good thing is it's not going to, it already doesn't autocomplete as is, so I don't see it as a downside if it starts autocompleting only for some users.
And I think it's like 10 lines of code, so it'd be pretty easy to take out if we decided to do a different implementation. And it, as long as it continues to support tab completion, it's not like it would be backwards incompatible.
Yeah. Okay. Let's put that on priority list. What else? Xiaoyan, did you have something open?
Oh, I don't have any problems. I only have one PR about the multiple parameter.
Okay,
simple.
yeah, we should definitely get that in.
Yeah, hope I can have.
You have an OPR on open as well. Allow passing an array of symbols for plot. Is that something we want to?
Yeah, but I think we should discuss. I mean, I will
that might
paste,
take a while, yeah.
paste this PR in the chat. I think this PR actually need more attention because the syntax of plot function is very complicated. There are too many parameters to plot different symbols. And I think the style parameter or the symbol parameter is very not intuitive. We probably should refactor the whole plot function. So that's why I haven't read this PR for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking back at it. So the idea of this is that someone can plot in one single function different types of symbols like circles, triangles, squares,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay. Like use different styles, different symbols.
So
styles.
currently we actually put the size of the symbols in the style. Like we can use style equals C3C, which means it's a circle and the size of the circle is 3 centimeters. But we also have a size, the parameter called size. So it's very confusing why I should put the size of the circle in the style parameter rather than in the size parameter. That's why I don't like the current syntax of the plot function.
So question is, shall we use a simple parameter instead of style first?
Uh,
So now we use the style parameter. It's just like the hash s. So do we want to first to change the name to simple? Then we can work on the simple parameter.
Yeah, that's one I think we need more discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't have a good opinion on what it should be off the cuff. So I'll think about this and post my thoughts once I have a better idea about how it could be solved. This seems like it would be unlikely to get in by Sunday. If there's still more discussion that needs to be had, should we put this as a V0.5 goal?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep, sounds good. Okay. Any other ones? Bugs? There's a few like problems I have with installing GeoPandas and PyGMT, but that's more like on the dependency hill that I'm slowly like trying to work my way around the ecosystem. So I'm hoping it'll be okay for when PyGMT releases 0.4, but yeah, it all depends on like the whole geo ecosystem, geography ecosystem, geo package ecosystem.
Weijie, I'm unfamiliar with using GeoPandas, but it's essentially still creating a data frame that you're trying to import directly into PyGMT, or what's the difference in GeoPandas versus just regular pandas data frame?
So GeoPandas is you can have what's geometry objects or like a geometry column for each of your rows. So each row has like a symbol or geometry symbol associated with it, and it's sort of like a
you can have it's a geometry. Geometry. It's not only a symbol. You can have a polygon. You can have a symbol and so on, or multi-polygons. Which in general are coming from shapefiles. So if, for example, here in Germany, we have postal codes, which you can directly load. And these are included in these geometry objects in a specific column. And that's, I think, easily to load that data with GeoPandas, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so you can load in like shapefiles. I think mostly it's been used for that. Shapefiles, GeoJSON files, or any like OGR format into GeoPandas. And a lot of people do that. And what we've sort of done already is you can pass in that geo data frame into PyGMT to plot or like run info and a few other things, but mostly for plotting, like polygons and stuff. The problem now is that installing GMT 6.2 and GeoPandas is a problem because there's some dependency somewhere that's like in conflict. So I'm hoping we can get that fixed by the weekend. But if not, then I don't know. I'm hoping it doesn't block the release. That's my biggest sort of fear right now. But we'll see.
Just so I understand, is this essential to get in order to have GeoPandas be a focus for the sci-fi sprint?
Yeah, I think so. If you want to start getting people to use GeoPandas.
Okay.
With that, shall we move on to the next topic? Which is Megan, you want to give a short spiel on the Earth Science Women's Network
Sure. So
status?
yeah, we posted on their website and through social media advertisement for a workshop in August on developing free open source software with PyGMT, and Weiji's volunteered to help and Paul has volunteered to help, and if anyone else wants to get involved, we'd welcome you to do so. The application portal closed on June 4th and we got 50 applicants, which seems great to me. And so we're in the process of reviewing those applications and selecting participants, where we want instructor to participant ratio of about 1 to 5, which at the current time would mean about 15 participants. And we've committed to providing responses to the applications by July 2nd, so about 2 weeks from now. So we have a little bit more time to review the applications. I would say we got some really fantastic applications. To me, it seems like roughly half were more interested in learning how to use GMT or PyGMT than they were learning how to develop open source software like PyGMT, which is encouraging in a different reason, because it means there's a lot of demand for our software, and we could probably have a lot of people interested in sort of video tutorial or a workshop on using PyGMT, which had been planned for sci-fi, but now that's not going to happen. So it's I think good signs all around. We have a bunch of people who are interested in learning how to develop software, and then a bunch more who are interested in becoming users. So after we get the applicant responses back by the beginning of July, we'll work on setting up the actual structure of the workshop, and we're gonna have to create a lot of issues this summer, because we need issues to support people at sci-fi and then issues for people at this workshop. So that will be good probably, because it'll mean a lot will get done. Does anyone have any questions about the workshop? Oh, also, this wasn't on the agenda. Another workshop update that came from the last GMT community meeting is that I think it was Joachim who wanted some, maybe at least a pitch at the GMT UNAVCO workshop for the wrappers. And so that might be another workshop related thing coming up. I think that the UNAVCO workshop will come up at the GMT community meeting on Thursday, and we could discuss what that means at that point.
So is it just like a small, like quick shout out to like PyGMT, GMT Julia during the UNAVCO workshop, or?
At the least, I'm not sure whether Joachim would prefer something more than that, or if that's it. I know we're kind of pushing.
Or would it be like a half day sort of thing? I don't know.
I do not know the answer to that, and I think we have a lot of activities going on, considering that we're a mostly volunteer group of people. So I'm not sure if we have the resources to host a half-day workshop on PyGMT. It might be more reasonable to have it be a shout out.
Okay, and the UNAFCO one is also like late August. Remember?
No, that's in July. I think it's
Oh yeah,
the
July.
21st and 22nd, but I could check on that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I had a
It's the
question.
20th and the 21st.
Okay. Because it would be sort of nice if we could get some of the ESWM applicants into that, the UNAFCO one.
You mean for
So,
the whole thing
For
or
the-
the PyGMT part?
yeah, maybe just like the PyGMT part. For,
Okay.
we have
I'm not
some-
sure how, because
but they have to
they
be like
had their own
UNAFCO
application portal.
registered. Yeah, they have their own sort of. Are there registrations open for that now?
No, I think that they have
The
closed and that
UNAFCO
the participants have
Oh,
already
okay.
been at least informed that they're going to be involved, if not anything else.
That's right. We can go for the AGU workshops then. It should be December.
One option that I had thought about is whether we could invite more people to we have the actual developers workshop, which is I think 2 afternoons, and then before that a refresher to Git and PyGMT, and for kind of a walkthrough tutorial. Perhaps we can invite more people to that than to the actual developer portion of the workshop, so that they could reach their goals of learning more about it. I think that, yeah, we could rely on some of the lessons learned from the SciPy workshop and the UNAFCO workshop for what capacity we have for training many people through Zoom at one time.
Yeah, I did think about that. So like have just the first day open up to, I don't know, the 50 people or however many people we're willing to take on. And then
Yeah.
sort of like have the next 2 days just be focused on, okay, just people who actually want to like, learn how to open PRs and stuff.
Yeah, I think that could be a good option. It would be
Yeah.
nice to be able to provide opportunities for everyone who was interested, because even those who aren't necessarily interested in the developing side, it still had compelling applications, and so it'd be nice to help them.
Exactly. And we could probably, convince some people to, okay, it's probably like not too hard to open a GitHub issue or something. Then we might end up with like having too much demand.
Yeah.
Which is something we need to manage as well. But we'll see.
Regarding just kind of,
yeah.
sorry.
No, you go.
Just like regarding, it seems like Megan was saying, there's a lot of people who may not be interested in helping develop PyGMT, but they just want to learn how to use it. As far as like these workshops, will they be like easily available online? I know like I found out about like PyGMT because of like Liam, and I think a few other people here did. Like Liam's Rose's video, and I'm curious if we can maybe not attract people at the workshop itself, but by putting them online, people might find PyGMT and come to the project that way.
My impression is that we could support that in some way, maybe by having the like sort of like walkthrough instructor section recorded, and then maybe we could have a different like breakout room that people could go into quickly to ask questions that wouldn't be recorded, because people might not be so comfortable asking questions if they know it's going to go on YouTube after or whatnot. So we could try to structure it in a way that allows that, but I have not looked into this much to see how practical it is.
Okay.
I agree that that would be a good idea to have some sort of updated roses type tutorial online. It's something people have asked about on the forum as well. Liam's also running another roses tutorial, I think, on PyGMT in August. So that might be, maybe we could update that on our website too.
I'll just put this in the notes. So record tutorial so people can have access to it. Okay. And if anyone wants to volunteer, I don't think like we're mostly one. So you'll be giving the talks, Megan?
Sorry, what was your question?
Oh, sorry. With the workshop, you sort of have like a tutorial running, and we just need as a volunteer. Like if anyone wants to volunteer, they would just sort of be in the background. Okay, answering like questions on like PyGMT.
Yeah, that is definitely an
issues and
option.
stuff.
I would say that I'm happy to split the teaching if anyone wants to be involved, but thinks it's like more valuable for them if they teach some lecture parts. We could accommodate that as well. So it's really whatever level of people are involved in, where it could range from just being available to like answer questions on GitHub to like being in the meeting room, all the way to teaching some parts of the lecture portion.
Okay, but we don't need to like guide every single one, like one-on-one, right? It's more of a show them how to do it and sort of have like little groups or something.
I agree with that, and we can still work out all the details, but I think having some component of team programming would probably be helpful for the participants, and then they can help each other as well.
Cool. And sci-fi sprints. So in case anyone didn't know, our sci-fi sort of workshop didn't manage to get in, but we did put in an application for the sci-fi sprints. So that's like the code sprint hackathon sort of session, which will be across 2 days. Liam ran it last year remotely online on Zoom. And for this year, I put in an application in, but it's not showing up on the website yet. I'm hoping they got it.
Are others showing up on the website?
I'm just checking it now. It's not on the website yet. It's funny, but okay. But I'm still assuming that it's going ahead because there's no reason it shouldn't go ahead. But yeah, so it'll be 2 days of sort of hackathons, and probably a good idea is to open up a lot of like beginner friendly issues so that people can sort of start working on them. So if you see something that's a really easy fix, try not to fix it yourself. Open an issue for it, and then or something like a little thing that's nagging you, like try to open an issue for it, and someone can, so that someone new can sort of work on it. So that's more just for the sci-fi, yeah. So that someone that can work on it on sci-fi, or even like on the ESWM and workshop. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that if there's something like sort of easy, a few lines of code changes, or like a tutorial, a mini tutorial or something you want. But don't have time to do, just like open an issue for it. And hopefully we can get someone to work on it. Yeah. What else?
I know they said online that they were going to give out guidance for hosting a sprint, but I'm not sure when that will come out. So do you know if we are like on a video chat with the participants the whole time, or is it just communicating over GitHub? How does that component work?
I think I mentioned to you on Slack that's Liam. Liam probably knows more than I do.
Okay, so you don't know that. Okay.
Yeah, my impression was I was sort of on the GitHub side, so I could only see what's happening on GitHub.
Okay.
But I think Liam had like a short few minutes, I don't know, could be up to half an hour spill on what PyGMT is about, and sort of I think you get allocated like a set time, maybe it's like 5 minutes to sort of describe your project and find volunteers.
Okay.
And then after that, it's sort of you probably get put into a Zoom call or something just with the PyGMT people. So assuming that people want to join,
Okay.
you go into like a PyGMT room, and there could be like some discussion going on there.
Okay.
And then people just go on GitHub. So that's my impression of it, looking at from GitHub. But yeah,
hopefully
the
we'll find
detail.
out more soon from the organizers as well in
Going
case
to
things
check with
changed.
Liam. Or however they're running it this year. My idea would be to run it on so the gather town thing I posted on Slack does has like a really good sort of interface. So you could sort of have like little meeting areas, and when you're like, so you get these like little Pokemon like avatars running around, and when people sort of like get close to each other, they could sort of like start a video conversation with each other. So it's sort of like a virtual conference type of setup, and that could be like quite useful. So we could set up like a desk for like, oh, okay, if you have any issues, come to this desk and someone will be there to help. Or you could have like 2 people working on one PR, and they could have their own video session going on at a table, and the instructors could like sort of go around and check in on people virtually as they're working on things. So that could be like something we utilize, but it still depends on like how the sci-fi people want it. Maybe they have their official Zoom channel or something. But I think that GarterTown does have like a Zoom integration, so that could be like a way to work on that. And this would also be useful, I think, for the ESWN workshop. Even like we could have set up like a GarterTown thing.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to at least try it out beforehand. So I
Yes.
scrolled around in the environment that you created, and it looked quite nice. There's a big step between like me being in the GarterTown room on my own versus trying to collaboratively code. So I think if we did that for the sci-fi sprint, that could be a good
we'll
run.
definitely need to test it out before. I was thinking of hosting this meeting on it, but we sort of won the recording, and I didn't want to mess around with the Zoom recording and testing that.
Well, if we end up going with it for sci-fi, and anyone wants to try out a PR or two, I could jump on with people, and we could. I would be willing to jump on with people to try it out.
Was there anything else anyone wanted to ask?
Are we planning on submitting an abstract for AGU?
I don't know if the
Yes.
sessions have been posted. I saw that from the schedule last week that the announcements to the people who proposed sessions went out, but when I was checking, I hadn't yet seen them posted for the general public. So I think it would be great if we submitted an abstract, but I don't know to what session it could go to because I don't think those have been announced yet.
Okay.
The abstract submission portal opens tomorrow, and I don't understand how anyone could submit an abstract if the sessions haven't been announced. So I hope that they will be announced tomorrow, and then we could look into it.
Yeah, so keep an eye out. And there's a GMT meeting in 2 days, so we could just like talk about it then. Okay. What else? Will, do you want to talk a bit about the output format stuff you've been working on
Yeah, sure. So
since we have a bit of time?
yeah, so I had written just kind of a bunch of if statements for if when something would be outputting, like the default would be a string, and then something that would change it to either like a pandas data frame or a NumPy array. And then I know there was discussion on creating like one function that can be used in everything else to like run it through. But then I saw your comment earlier about that we should stick to either a pandas data frame or a string based upon what you've done with grid track. I wasn't entirely sure why, since it, as far as I can tell, I mean, if you're converting to a NumPy array and then also a data frame, I don't see why there's inherently a difference. But I was hoping we could talk about that.
Yeah, so in how do I put it? So the NumPy array, there is a bit of a difference with NumPy arrays and pandas data frames. So with NumPy
yeah,
arrays,
sorry.
you can only. Oops. So
I was
if
gonna say,
you
like, I
load,
know they're different file formats, but as far as just the actual like putting the data in one versus the other, everything seemed to be working on my end when I was just running through the like the NumPy 2 array or something like that.
yeah, it's more like the nitty-gritty stuff. So with pandas data frames, you can have different data types for each column. So you could have like a floating type or a integer type column, different D types for each column. But for NumPy arrays, you can only have one single data type for the whole array. So there's that sort of difference. So if you have like, yeah, numerical values that are just like integers, you don't want to load that as a floating point 64 object. That's sort of my stance on why we should go with pandas data frame. But Megan, you had a point or comment?
Oh yeah, so the default being pandas seems fine. I really quite liked Will's implementation of having a choice. From a v0.4 perspective, I guess the decision for whether leaving that in or adding it later relates to consistency. So whether it would be okay to have that for one right now while it's not in the other data processing methods or functions versus waiting and implementing it kind of across at the same time. So I guess that to me seems like the consideration for whether to offer that choice now versus in a separate PR.
I mean, I'm not too familiar with using grid track, but as far as I can tell, everything should be outputting numbers as opposed to strings. So I don't see the issue with having a NumPy array right now, since everything should be in theory able to be a floating point number.
Yes, I think that is correct to, yeah, you are probably correct to actually, I can think of a module that outputs non-numerical modules off the top of my head, but there's like hundreds of modules out there, so I could be wrong. But yeah, to Megan's point that we should probably keep it like sort of consistent across like most of the modules right now. And maybe leave it for v0.5, like once we have a bit of more of a discussion on the output format.
Okay, I'll play around with it and
Yeah.
kind of get it my
Yeah.
grid to XYZ and grid volume in line with what you guys have for grid track.
Cool.
I guess kind of on the topic of like further standardization. I know we were talking about like how we want to make like region and pen kind of different types of attributes instead of just providing a long string. Obviously not going to get done for 0.4, but we're planning on trying to have a big overhaul for 0.5 for that.
I would like to see something happen before 0.5. I have left Leo's comments about the implementation in my inbox is currently like the only GitHub notification that stays in there, because I think that there still should be some more discussion, but I agree with you that it will be nice to focus on that for the next release, especially for the simple cases like pen. Just one note about the GRD to XYZ issue. It is nice to have it consistent. Implementing it like GRD track and the block mean and block medium may lead to another deprecation, right? If we decide to go to a different implementation later on, but it seems like we kind of are valuing keeping them all the same and at least deprecating them in the same release than implementing what might come in the future now for one module or method.
I missed it. What did Joaquim say about the region and pen settings and things like that?
Leo's comment was in the, I think it was what's the most Pythonic way for long GMT arguments, where Weiji had suggested a class implementation, and Leo pointed out how people can get overzealous with classes really easily. So I think the reason why I had been sort of holding off on commenting too much on the pen implementation is that I think it is important to have the broader scope of how the more complicated modules will be, or like a directive modifier pairs will get implemented before doing the simplest cases, so that they're not so inconsistent with each other that users might get confused as they have to jump back and forth between different methods of adding modifiers and directives. Is that at least my impression of that? Yeah,
I think it makes sense. I know kind of, I don't know much about Julia, but it looks like Joaquim sort of figured it out. So I have been meaning to try to get smarter on that, looking through the Julia module or Julia wrapper. But I think that might just be more for the simpler implementations, like you were saying.
Yeah, I haven't spent too much time looking at the Julia side. You're right that we all could benefit from looking at his work. Weiji or Dangdang, you've probably thought about this the most out of all of us. Do you have any thoughts on pen or the broader scope of these complicated arguments to parameters?
You want to go, Dangdang?
I think it's complicated because there are so many modifiers, and even pen we can define the pen class or a function, but sometimes pen is just used in another modifier, so it's more complicated than what we think than the example in the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you really like dig really deep into it, like it's definitely not a simple matter, and I do understand the user's perspective of just like being able to tap complete like pen color or pen style within the function itself. But from like a developer's perspective, it's I'm actually like anti-class myself. So like I really don't like to write Python classes. So and it's only I only use classes as a last resort, and this is one of those times when I think that classes, the flexibility of having classes, Python classes, actually makes sense. Just because these long form parameters like pen or region are so complicated that you sort of need that flexibility. And I don't say this lightly, because I really, most of my code, like you never see a class within it if I can get away with it. But and I think even like Leo might have mentioned that he's okay with like either function or like a function way or a class way. It just as I think as long as we sort of like document it properly, then people will just pick it up. My gripe with it has always been there's like another package called I think HoloViews. Some of you might have used it. So it's like another Python plotting module, and they have exactly that. So you can do like a style color or like symbol color or stuff, and they have like this almost like seems like 100 parameters you can tap complete within the function itself just to define like the symbol or something. And I've always found that like quite like once you have to like tap complete through like so many options, or like read through the documentation and scroll through it gets really like messy. So I kind of prefer if pen would be like a separate thing yourself, and you can sort of like reuse a pen. So you could call something like a blue pen variable and just set that, and then reuse it for different sort of functions, be it like plot, or so you could plot a blue pen triangle and a blue pen circle or something. But that's just my opinion on it. And yeah, it's up to like the users and what the rest of you guys want to find it easier, I guess.
I mean, I can see the advantages and disadvantages of both ways. I just feel like our current implementation for like projection or pen is just essentially having to learn GMT, except you're just putting a different name in front of it. Not that learning GMT is the worst thing in the world. It just seems that we're essentially providing little benefit to use PyGMT when they can do most of the same stuff in GMT with the same commands.
Yeah, that's true. We could like have like two different sort of side-by-side comparisons and sort of see like, yeah, what sort of makes sense. And get more, yeah. I think with like the SciPy and Earth Science Women's Network workshops coming up, that could be a good time to sort of see what people might prefer. If like, yeah, if we see like a lot of people having problems with GMT like syntax, like command line syntax, we could sort of like, yeah, design our API to be more Pythonic.
Yeah, just figure the longer we go without either deciding to keep things the way they are or change them, the kind of the deeper the hole we're digging ourselves into potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it could be helpful to have just a proof of concept PR for one of the more complicated options, just to see how that same kind of style as pen or a data class might look when pen is nested within like a I don't know, but pick your favorite long modifier option in GMT. So we could try that out, and that might help us come up with the final format that will be used moving forward. I agree that implementing the simpler ones first is like a good way to go, but I am concerned about whether it will end up being incompatible with some of these longer, more complicated options.
And just kind of also to talk past the 0.4 release. I know last time we had a 0.3.1. It was like almost exactly a month after 3.0 came out. Are we? I mean, I'm assuming there are going to be bugs. Are we planning on holding off on PRs again after 0.4 comes out and just doing like minor fixes and documentation and bug fixes, things like that, next month or so?
Yes, I would hold off at least for a few weeks. I think with the 0.3.1, we had a lot of like really good like documentation going, and I was a bit pleased to see that, and also overwhelmed, to be honest. I didn't realize we could do so much work on documentation. So yeah, I think that is sort of the idea, that we probably keep like a month open when we don't add any new features. So no new modules. We could probably have some enhancements, but that's just, yeah, depends on like what people are sort of want to work on, I guess.
Sounds good. I mean, I just think, assuming bugs come to light in the nearish future, I'm guessing like a month or so is what you're envisioning.
Yeah.
It's based purely off the other time I saw it happen.
Yeah, what was it like for v0.2.1? It's been so
That was before my time.
Yeah. Don, do you have any comments on?
Yeah, I think we can hold off any new features in maybe 2 weeks. I don't want to wait too long to merge any new features into the master branch. Yeah. And if there any actually serious bug in 0.4.0, then we can release 0.5 quickly. I mean,
yeah, it doesn't have to be like a 3 months
yeah,
minor version release. I know it's sort of been like every 3 months or maybe more.
Don't
But
even have to
there's
wait
no
for
reason.
GMT this time.
Yeah, no, yeah, this has kind of dragged on, but yeah.
and we now have actually maybe I don't remember. We have many tests, so I think it's robust. So we should be good.
Famous last words, Dong Dong.
Yeah, the tests are there for a reason. It's, yeah, you start to appreciate it after a while. Okay, so we are at the top of the hour. Any last sort of things? Michael or Jiayuan, do you have anything else to add?
I'm happy with everything.
Okay. Just want to keep
Nice
coding.
to see you guys the first time.
It was really great to see everybody.
Yeah.
See most of you probably in 2 days from now.